All right, what's up, Will Shapers? This is Phantology with our part 3 review of Rhythm of War, and we have 4 people actually of the possible Phantology 5. So I've got Ryan and Ben and Josh. Josh is frantically finishing up his listen actually of part 3, and he's going to hop in. So we're going to get some red hot takes. And if you're listening, we're not going to spoil anything past part 3. So if you've just barely finished, you're safe to listen. We swear there won't be any spoilers. We haven't really read past anyway, so we should be good to go there. We are going to have some theories, and if the theories turn out to be right, then that means, we're not cheating, right? We're actually stopped here after part 3. So, and actually, Ryan, some things you said in the part 2 review, I think already came to fruition.
Yeah. What can I say? I am a prophet of Roshar.
So you're Teravangian on his second brightest day. So if you happen to be a big fan of Phantology and a big fan of Dresden, then you will know that this is not Josh's first time frantically trying to finish something before a podcast. He also did this with Battleground, the last Dresden book to come out, and it was like he was like listening to it like 3x speed or something.
You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of a homework assignment that's due, and your teacher's collecting the homework, and you're frantically trying to write in the last answers before you turn in your homework.
And typically, those assignments are not you don't do very well on them. So we hope for the best for our colleague Josh here when he comes on, and please don't let him know how much we've badmouthed him. But so let's go into our review a little bit here. So, like part 2, we're going to start with the interludes that preceded the part 3 action. Then we will talk through all of the characters in part 3, and then we'll leave off some time for some theories, some worst of the best from the part, and then we will stop right before the next set of interludes, and that will be in our part 4 review, which will come out soon. So before we get started, if you like Phantology, you can find more at www.phantologybooks.com. We have our full catalog on there. And if you want to support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/phantology_books. And shout out to our new patron, Casey Walsh. Thank you for your support. Casey, very much appreciate it. Just know that all the money from patron support goes directly back into the podcast, making this the best product possible for you fantasy book lovers. So interlude number 1 interlude number 4, but the first one before part 3 was a Vire Moash interlude. So with Moash, how much of a villain is he for you guys? Because he ranges from the F Moash subreddit to the people who think Moash did nothing wrong. And honestly, I feel like I kind of fall somewhere in the middle where I don't necessarily like seeing him on the page. I don't know if he always really gets my hair on my arm standing up, right? Like, is he really that villainous to you guys yet?
Well, I feel like this interlude specifically really kind of rewrote his character, right? Like he's kind of full on like psychopath now, like just doesn't care. He has kind of like this weird reputation around town of just being this guy who likes to like haul rocks and work. And he has like somebody who considers themselves to be Vire's friend or Moash's friend, and they're like, oh, I think I'm gonna go away, and he's like, all right, sounds good, see you later, peace out. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't just doesn't, it doesn't feel like he's making any type of connection on a real human in a real human way. I don't know. So I feel like this kind of took Moash's character and just like it was a big change.
Well, he's really interesting because he's clearly what would happen to Kaladin if he gives into odium, right? If he just decides to give up his passions, then he would become essentially just like Moash. He'd be super good at killing, but other than that, he just wouldn't really care much about anything. And right now, the fact that Kaladin cares is what's hurting him the most. And so Moash is just a very pained person who is really struggling to try and figure out. I guess just trying to figure out what's right, and it's kind of gone a very dark way for him. And in order to deal with the consequences of his actions, he's kind of just had to give up. I don't think he's truly evil, but I think he's a good villain.
So what do you think about he sees himself as unchained, right? Like that's the way he describes himself. What do you
Yep.
feel about how do you feel about that description? I mean, he doesn't consider that as evil. He's just like, hey, I'm unchained. I don't care about anything. Like I've given everything to Odium. Um, I'm just doing, I guess, what feels right. I don't know. Like, how do you feel about his description of himself there?
I guess what you guys were saying there kind of makes me reevaluate my opinion a little, especially kind of I like how you were describing him as a psychopath, Ben, and talking about him being unchained. Yeah, I mean, I guess that could be where Kaladin would possibly go if he was to go this direction and he stopped trying to care and he's just like, I can't do it. The, death before life type of type of thinking, I guess, would put you at this point where none of these things really held you back. But at the same time, it's like, okay, you don't have these chains, these things weighing you down, these things that make life difficult. But then, what is there to live for? There's nothing left.
Yeah.
And he even kind of insinuates that at the end of the chapter, where Odium says, I want to do with Kaladin what I've done with you. And then Moash thinks to himself, well, I'll kill Kaladin to save him from that. So I think he's admitting to himself that there's not really anything left for him to live for. He's just kind of still going because he doesn't even have the passion to take his own life. Not that he should. I'm not advocating that he should, but
Well, he says that there's two types of freedom that he could offer Kaladin, or I forget the word he uses. One of them is to become like himself, where he has given everything to Odium, and the other is to kill Kaladin, right? So like, and he sees both of those almost as equally valid choices.
Yeah.
So that kind of is also like indicative of how he values life, right? So
Do you guys think, I mean, are we expecting to get a bigger moment with him? We've just kind of seen him a few times throughout the book and in smaller scales, but this
yeah.
must pay off somehow before the end, I would
Well,
assume.
this kind of weaves itself way through part two, because we know kind of that him and that Moash and Odium come up with a plan to kind of invade Kaladin's dreams, and to kind of put him, like push him up to the ledge and
Yeah.
allow him to step off, right? And we kind of see that happening until the very end of part two, where Kaladin is waking up from this fitful dream of nightmares and shadows chasing him. And it actually took me until that point to be like, oh crap, this is Odium and Vire or Moash working together to
Right.
affect Kaladin like this.
Part three, I'm assuming is what you mean.
Sorry, part three.
Yeah. Is this almost like a similar to a Bondsmith type thing going on here with this connection that Dalinar is making, and connection capital C? I think Odium uses connection capital C as well when he talks about Vire and Kaladin and filling the holes in Kaladin's soul with this type of like evil nightmare going on.
I don't think it's related. I mean, he's using Odium is using, I guess, kind of Moash maybe as a bridge to Kaladin, but I don't know that it's related to the type of connection that Kaladin or that Dalinar uses to connect him to other people. I don't know. Maybe it could be.
Maybe just more of a generic magical connection.
Yeah.
Okay. And Ben also, Moash is in the background as well because he's the one that's been operating the Oath Gates using the Honor Blade, right? And they don't realize that. We do as the reader.
Well, I think Navani does, because she says Moash the murderer. She knows it's him.
Oh, does she? Okay, I don't remember that exact detail, but there's
Yeah.
there's one other. So when Kaladin is going after the second node, or no, the first node, when Kaladin is defending that first node that they found inside the wall, there's some rubble that was cut away, and Kaladin looks at it, and it's like cut very precisely with a shard blade. And I thought Moash was gonna step out and be involved in that fight, but I guess not. But so there's been a few clues of him kind of lurking around. I would assume by the end he comes in, but we will see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so next one is Lift, and the main thing here is we learn kind of her backstory, not necessarily her backstory, but we learn that cultivation has done something even more so than what we first suspected. And then later on in the part, we learn that she's powered by Lifelight, and we don't know why this happened, but it is obviously pretty important for what Navani is figuring out at the same time. And then there's also this side thing going on with the red AVR that Mraize is fighting against. There's some guy who was killed that we assume Mraize is associated with this. So still don't know what Mraize is up to, but Lift has been, I guess, pulled into it a little bit.
Yeah, that was kind of weird with Lift. I think the thing that I wanted to talk about with her Interlude too, like the Murray's thing kind of confused me. But I love how we found out that the thing she went to cultivation for was to not change, right? She said like, I don't want to change. And we kind of knew that was her kind of shtick from the very beginning, right? Like she doesn't want to get older, she doesn't want to grow.
Yeah.
But we see that so anyway, and we know that it has something to do with her mom. Maybe her mom passed away. Actually, I think it's confirmed that she did. And so maybe she knew that her mom was getting sick and she didn't want her to get sicker. Anyway,
It was something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and so it was honestly hard for me not to like really like Lift. Before, Lift was kind of like a silly character, but at that point it was like, wow, you're now like very, I guess, relatable. And then also like imagining her like, I think going through puberty and having her body change like that, and her trying to deal with that. She was talking about wrapping her chest. It made you realize that like this character is going through a lot of stuff right now. That would be
She's
hard.
not just
for
a silly
her.
child anymore, and she has like no support
Right.
other than her void spren. Not really a void spren, but
Yeah.
I will say,
Wisdom
with Lift,
I
I will say with Lift, I really like those developments, but it did kind of make me feel like Edge Dancer was kind of wasted. Like I've always been kind of an Edge Dancer apologist, you know. Like I liked it, I enjoyed the story, and I thought it was a cool tie-in to Oathbringer.
oh,
But
the
now I
story,
feel like
not
if
the
we-
order.
Yeah, sorry, the story, the novella of Edge Dancer. But I feel like if we could have lived inside Lift's head for an entire novella, it would have been much more interesting having like known her entire backstory, because I think it would have made for more relatable and emotional moments for us.
Yeah, that's
Wait,
true.
So you feel like Edge Dancer was wasted because it didn't explore her backstory more?
Because we're not getting
Well-
it on the emotional payoff until this one interlude when there was already a whole novella, right, Josh?
Yeah, exactly. Like I feel like now I really want to have a novella from Liv's perspective, knowing what we know about her. But we're not going to get a second one, presumably. So I wish that kind of we would have, been able to find that information out before. I don't really see why we couldn't have found that information out before. At least the fact that she like didn't want to grow up because, she wanted to stay her mother's little girl. Like just knowing that, like confirmed, would have been so much more interesting having a novella from that perspective. I feel like it could have been a lot more emotional. And I think that's the main criticism of Edge Dancer, was that there wasn't a lot of emotional stakes in it. It was just kind of a fun romp with Lift.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess I think maybe a side purpose of Edge Dancer was to explore Lift's character a little bit more. And I do agree that probably could have been a bit more emotional, and it would have been a good opportunity to bring out some more of Lift's backstory. But I think the primary purpose of the story of Edge Dancer was to explore, because Nail makes this critical change in his ideology from I need to kill Radiance to prevent the desolation from coming to he changes to realize I was wrong and
Yeah.
I've been acting wrong for years. And so I think that Edge Dancer served its purpose, which was to bring about those events that we wouldn't have otherwise read about. And it's not necessarily a Lift story so much as it is a story about bridging the gap between
I don't know,
Yeah.
man.
So I think, well, I think it did. So I think it did a really good job with what you were saying with the whole Nail and that, but I feel like that could have been explored through like a novella from a different perspective. I don't know. I just feel like I wish we would have had that character development within Edge Dancer. Like, I don't know why they couldn't have even explained some of that stuff in Edge Dancer as well, with the backstory with her mom. You know,
Yeah, I
feel
think
like it
we
was
could
hinted
have
at,
had
but-
we could have had our cake and ate it too, and got both of those
So,
things
yeah.
in that novella.
anyway,
One last
but that was, sorry, Ben, you go ahead.
I was going to say one last thought. I know that Sanderson has talked about the fact that he wanted Lift to kind of break the mold of what we would expect a Radiant to be, similar to Stump, like the old woman that we met in part 2.
The Stump.
He said the Stump, right? I feel like he wanted to say, hey, like a Radiant doesn't just have to be like this early 20s like person that's going to be a hero. It can be like a little girl who just is silly, you know. And so I feel like now we're kind of getting into a bit more seriousness. She's growing up, where she's contemplating life a bit more, and I feel like that's kind of a natural transition to occur.
That's
Yeah,
true.
for sure.
And I think we're going to get a lot more of Lift in Era 2 of Stormlight. Like, I think I remember hearing that she's going to be one of the main characters. So maybe Sanderson's just really waiting to like delve deep into her psyche until Era 2, which is fine. Anyway,
this makes, I mean, this interlude, I should say, really reveals two important things, which is that Lift doesn't make Stormlight from food. She makes Lifelight, which is of cultivation, which is interesting, and I don't even really know what the full implications of that are, other than perhaps the sibling stamping effects don't affect her quite as much because of that. And then also Mraize is playing both sides of the conflict, which is not super surprising. But the question that I really want to know, which maybe you guys have some good theories about, is how is this boon been applied to Lift? If her age, she wanted her age not to change, but her age is obviously changing. So what about her isn't changing?
well, so I thought it read, as long as everything is going bad for me, I don't want to change. And so now that things are going good for her, she's starting to change.
Okay.
That's what I
Seems
thought.
kind of weird.
That's what I thought the reveal was, because the exact wording was something along the lines of, while everything is terrible, I want to stay the same. And then she stayed like little. I think she's like actually older than 10 or 11 or 12, you know, however old she appears. I think she's actually like a good amount older than that, but she doesn't look it. So I think her body like stopped changing and developing for a while.
All right, I guess we're going with
Let us
that
know on Discord.
explanation.
I'm not 100% on that. We'll have to talk later about that. But that's
Okay.
I'm
That was-
similar to you, Ryan.
That was my understanding when I read it. I that wasn't like, I don't know. When I read that part, that was what I came away understanding. So I could be wrong, but I'm not just trying to come up with like a wild theory. That was like what I thought we were getting.
Yeah, and we definitely may mess up some of these details. So hop on our Discord server, Phantology Discord. Invites are in episode descriptions and everywhere where you find Phantology, and let us know what we're missing. So final interlude was again a Teravangian interlude. And this was a dumb Taravangian, or at least a below average Taravangian. But this was interesting because Taravangian started to kind of doubt himself, and he saw that dumb Taravangian could actually trick Odium, and he sees the importance of one Renarian Colin. And Ryan, in our episode 2 review, you totally called this because this was referenced at the end of Oathbringer and again here. And so what's coming out of this is that anyone close to Renarin, since Renarin can see the future, is someone that Odium doesn't quite have wraps on. He's not able to see all of the possibilities here. The Doctor Strange phenomenon is broken a little bit. And then after Taravangian realizes this, he's like, I'm still going to fight somehow. We're not really sure what that means. And then he still does decide to betray the coalition. So Taravangian impressions?
I think, Josh, go for it.
Well, I just want to go back because I went and looked up the Lift chapter. Okay.
Oh,
So it says, I asked not to change, Lift whispered, opening her eyes. I said, when everything else is going wrong, I want to be the same. I want to stay me, not become someone else.
What?
Okay.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean
So-
she
so
stayed.
I think-
What's gone terribly wrong for Lift throughout her life? It seems like everything's kind of
Put an
always broken
orphan
her
on
way.
the streets.
Well,
I think
from
I
that.
think it's when she was like she lost her mom and then was on the streets and then I think she's always had like an optimistic outlook, but she was just like trying to steal food to stay alive. But then once she
Okay.
started
I-
having friends and living, she started to change.
I guess the other interpretation there is that she still is herself, but who you are changes, but you're still Lift. But I don't know. Yeah, either way. Okay, we are going to move on to Taravangian though.
Josh is
Sorry,
going for a
sorry,
very hard
sorry,
magic here. Okay. Okay, so you asked what thoughts about Taravangian.
Yes.
I am so impressed at how this is probably Sanderson's best gray character. I would say he's taken over Moash at this point, right? Like you're constantly like, this guy is the biggest jerk. He's hiring an assassin to go kill everybody, and now he's betraying Dalinar, but at the same time realizing that he still wants to fight. And at the same time, even when he is betraying Dalinar, he's doing what's best for his little nook of the world, which you can't really fault somebody too much for that. So it's really cool. I mean, I really appreciated this interlude for Taravangian.
Sanderson said the chapter later where him and Dalinar are talking, where he talks about how he's like the bearer of agonies and he's willing to do whatever it takes to save the small sliver of the humanity in Carbranth. Sanderson said that was his favorite chapter to write in this part.
Yeah, I know I referenced this, I think in our primer, but it was the analogy of if you have 3 people and 2 of them are guilty of murder, but one of them's not, what do you do as a leader? And Taravangian says you kill all 3 of them. And it's because a monarch's purpose is to have his soul stained so that everybody else can live pure and innocent lives. Like, that analogy was such a good foreshadow. It was pretty much, that analogy encapsulated this whole final interaction between Dalinar and Taravangian in this part, where it was kind of both of them really coming into their own worldviews and allowing those worldviews to dictate their actions. Taravangian's not backing down from his decisions, but at the same time, he's making it clear that he might not be giving up completely either.
Which honestly, I didn't understand. Like, him not giving up. What does this mean? I guess we'll see, but it doesn't seem like he's doing a whole lot to not give up.
Yeah. Like that last conversation with Dalinar, you're like, okay, I was expecting a little bit more from this.
Yeah, exactly. Like, maybe you're going to tell Dalinar since you're not giving up, but instead you're like fully expecting to just still be killed here. I didn't quite understand that.
Yeah, that was a little weird. Yeah.
All right, so we're through the interludes. Let's go into our main characters. So Shallan and Adolin, they're off in Shadesmar doing whatever. So we'll wish them the best. We'll catch up with them in part 4. Part 3 was all about Kaladin and Navani in the tower, and a little bit of Dalinar and Yasna off in Emil, with some Venli in the tower and some flashbacks as well. The flashbacks finally started. So I guess for me, Kaladin was the most compelling plotline here. I kind of liked someone in our Discord server said this was basically
Really?
Kaladin doing Die Hard in the tower. And I mean, yeah, I thought it was fun to see him basically all of his powers taken away, and he was like slowly building things back up. And it reminded me of some things back in Way of Kings. And I just kind of like this type of story where you have a character who's really downtrodden and he's got to like gather his resources. Kind of reminds me of some Name of the Wind, where you're always wondering how many talents Quoth has in his wallet. I was really into Kaladin, but I guess no for you, Ben.
This is Home Alone, all right?
Yeah,
I was
that
thinking
too.
Kaladin's Home Alone with the robbers.
I was kind of thinking this is like like Zelda doing a big Zelda puzzle, you know, like having to go around and get like different objects to unlock certain things and like build your abilities.
A little bit,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, we'll get to Ben's hot or ice cold take, I think, in a second. But I just want to say I agree with you, Stephen, that this was, I really, really enjoyed Kaladin's parts in this section of the book.
I feel like for you, like all those reasons that you listed are the exact reasons why I didn't like it. Like it was very much, it felt like to me, like we just need Kaladin to be doing something right now. And so we're just going to have him do stuff. And that stuff can be anything. And it isn't going to really, like, it just, I'm like, Kaladin's come so far and he's just knocked back to square one. I don't know. And it's not like
So
he's
none
for
of this
the
was
ideal.
compelling for you. You need big
None of this was
things.
compelling.
You don't care about him
When it got to a
practicing with
Kaladin
the Nymph
chapter, yeah, I'm like, there's a glove. He's like a glove, like that's his new power. And
Love from Iron Man's suit, all right?
Dude, yes, that's what I was thinking.
okay, I'm just gonna say, yeah, I guess I think I made my point. Like those exact reasons why you guys did like it, I just didn't like it because of those same things. And I'm not,
Yeah,
so
I
I'm
guess
not
we
sure
agree
if
to
like
disagree.
Sanderson, yeah, I don't know. What did you think, Ryan?
I'm kind of in the middle here. I think that there were a lot of parts that Ben said where Kaladin was doing stuff just to do stuff. And I wanted more, like, I guess more meaningful actions from him. Like, I mean, I guess it's meaningful that he's risking his life to go to an Ardent and get supplies for Teft, and he's watching over Teft. But I loved the last part where the sibling is like, my node's about to be taken, and Navani's like, contact the Windrunner, and she does. And so Kaladin's like, he's there, he's beat up, he's just emotionally distraught, can't sleep at all, and he gets this call and he's like, all right, I gotta do it. Like I have, no matter what. And so like without his powers, he's just doing whatever he can using this Fabrial, and he's clearly outgunned, and he still pulls it out. He the one thing that I will say about Kaladin, which is kind of off topic from what anybody else has said, is I expected this book to push us in the direction of some sort of romance. And I mean, before this book, I was thinking, well, I kind of want Kaladin and Yasna to end up together, but it's becoming more and more apparent that Yasna's isolated from Kaladin. I think that Sanderson would have ended up starting something between them by this point if they were going to end up together.
Well, I think Yasna and Lift have, and Wit have something going on. So,
well, let me finish my point, and then
okay,
you can talk about that. So then I was thinking, because of part one, well, maybe like something's going to happen between Kaladin and Leshwi. I mean, I know Leshwi is several thousand years old and a different species, but hey, we're not
somewhat
discriminating.
insane. Yeah.
We're not discriminating between species here. But then I figured, well, like somehow Kaladin's going to have to strengthen this relationship with Leshwi, and that hasn't happened. And so I'm a little bit disappointed that nothing's happened up through part 3 still with
Ryan's just He's looking to ship Kaladin with somebody.
Yeah.
It is a good point, Ryan. And this is something I talked about before. All of Kaladin's romances are just off screen and just written off. I mean, he had the two when he was younger, and then the thing with Lynn over the year that we missed is just like, hey, that happened. By the way, no. There were some scenes where Adolin and Shallan were trying to help him out, and nothing really came of that. So it was hinted at a little bit, but it doesn't seem like Sanderson's really, at least not in this book, he's not really going into the romance vein at all.
So okay,
I have a few thoughts. Go ahead, Ben. I'll save mine.
No, I want my last word.
Okay, you can have your last word. Okay, so about the romance, part of me is a little bit happy that Sanderson isn't ruining like one of his best characters ever with like a subpar romance, because he's not very good at romance. Like that's I think what everyone agrees about is Sanderson's weakest, you know. And it's kind of like with Kelsier. Kelsier had, well, I don't want to do any spoilers for Mistborn, but it's kind of like Kelsier, right? Like
sure.
There was some okay. But so one thing in general about this book that I've had a little bit of a hard time with is it seems like everything is meant to teach you something about the world, right? And it seems like most of the scenes and most of the character viewpoints in this book so far have been like, okay, this is happening, but let me teach you something like really important about Stormlight or Voidlight or Lifelight or and so it feels like you're having so much to keep track of in the subtext of all of these cool and done well scenes. So I felt like it was really refreshing to see Kaladin have some, some missions, little mini missions that he gets to kind of go do without really having to worry about that stuff. And I feel like the tension was done well. So I feel like I really like, oh yeah, there's that whole sequence where Kaladin was sneaking around the tower. But then when you like went back and reread it, you would be like, oh yeah, that was a really cool sequence,
I guess, yeah, I can agree with that. Okay, here's my final thing.
Yeah, let's hear your final word, Ben.
Okay, I never felt like the stakes were super high with Kaladin. I never felt like he was going to die. Like, so even when he was like facing down the pursuer and like 15 other heavenly ones, and it just felt like he had a lot of plot armor going into this. Okay, so that's my main point. I will say that the MVP of this sequence is David, and I feel like this was Sanderson. If you're active on Reddit, you can't read more than like 20 comments without somebody saying life before death radiant. Like when somebody says kind of like a hard thing. And this was like such like a, I feel like this is like Sanderson speaking to all of his Reddit fans, where David, like the one word he like the first words he utters are like life before death radiant, so that was a cool moment, I will say.
Dude, is David gonna become a radiant now? He's 1/3 of the way there, maybe.
Remember my crazy theory from part 2, Steven?
Yeah, Ryan thinks David is gonna become the bondsmith that bonds the sibling.
It's a crazy out there theory, but
I could get behind that. Anyway,
I think he's too much of a tertiary character or quaternary character, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I kind of forgot he existed until we had him pop up here randomly.
Okay.
I have a crazy theory in kind of relation to Kaladin and Syl, who we didn't talk about. I think the more emotionally impactful moments in Kaladin's sequences were his conversations with Syl, and Syl becoming more human-like and trying to relate to him, and showing some morose tendencies as well, thinking about her knight that died previously. So my crazy theory is that somehow Spren can become full-on human. Probably crazy. I don't know if I'm really going to get behind it or not, but I feel like maybe there's like an additional change that a Spren can go into where they really do become like, I don't know if they can actually become human or they can like fully manifest in the physical realm somehow. Or something is going to make them like more and more human. This has really been something that he's been doing a lot with the Spren, is they're trying to become more, I mean, mostly Syl, but I don't know. Like, could there be something here? Or is it too crazy?
Well, I think he's hinted that like Syl is like changing colors more, becoming more lifelike. She's able
Yeah, she's
to
able to
have more of a
touch things.
physical
Yeah.
impact. Yeah. So I wouldn't say it's too crazy. Um, yeah, I feel like the way he's doing that is kind of making people go into Shadesmar and interacting with Spren as humans that way.
Yeah.
But I think it was in part 3. It was, if not, it's probably in part 2, where we find out that the is it span reads? No, the Fabrial, whatever they are actually like Spren that have become like metal. What are those things called? Like the, oh gosh, like they're able to
Shard blades?
Shard blade.
no, not shard blades, like
Gemstone?
I don't know why I'm forgetting this. Like what Shallan was trying to steal from Yasna, the
Soul
Soulcasters.
Soulcasters. Yeah, like I don't know why I forgot that, but we like, because it was kind of Nivani's thing trying to figure out how Soulcasters worked, and you realize that it was like a full-on Spren that had like become like metal, and that was like how they're able to like have their powers, that it wasn't a normal Fabrial. So that's also kind of like an example of a Spren having more of a physical presence in the world.
Both gates too.
Those gates as well. And those, yeah, we don't know exactly how those work. Special type of Spren. Okay, so we leave off with Kaladin out in the storm. He's pretty much dead. Dalinar saves him a little bit. Fate's still very much in the balance, Ben. So I know you had said he had plot armor, and yeah, he kind of does.
He literally
also-
has the Stormfather throw him back on the bridge.
Well, come on,
How
it's
much more
just
plot
because
armor
it's
can we
because
get?
Dalinar, another
Dalinar.
character, came in and saved him.
Plot armor always has a reason, dude. It's like, but that doesn't mean it's not plot armor.
I think that's like more Deus Ex Machina, like literally a semi god coming and
Yeah.
catching you and putting you back on the ledge is prime
Yeah.
example.
I was fine with it. Come on, we
I
can't
was
have Kaladin die.
Poor people at the very beginning of the storm that the Stormfather doesn't give 2 Fs about, though. Like just knocked him out with a boulder.
Oh crap, those guys are already dead.
like-
Sorry, Dalinar.
Then like
The
30 seconds
Stormfather
later,
just hoping
he's like,
Dalinar.
So
Yeah, he's just hoping Dalinar's gonna drop it, and he's like, "Ah, nope, they're gone, dude."
So one thing that we didn't really talk about in the interludes though is that Odium has clearly taken an interest in Kaladin, and Kaladin's being significantly affected by these visions that he's seeing, these dreams which he doesn't realize are visions. Could you guys at this point see Kaladin becoming Odium's champion?
no, man.
I hope not.
I mean, I think that's been the fear ever since we learned about Odium's champion. You know, is that it's
Yeah, and
gonna
I-
either be Dalinar or Kaladin.
I have discarded it pretty much offhand every time, but he can't just be like, oh, now I'm going to make Dabbit Odium's champion or somebody
Yeah.
like that. It's got to be like somebody who you're emotionally connected to, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And how crazy of a twist would it be if Kaladin, not that I want it to happen, but how crazy of a twist would that be?
So I think it's much more likely that Adolin is on that track than Kaladin is.
I don't think that's likely.
I mean, that was always the theory after Words of Radiance when he killed Sedius, and you're like, okay, yeah, he's bound for dark things, and then no, it turns out that didn't matter at all.
Yeah, and then in part 2, he decapitates like 3 people and chops the guy's arm off. Like, he's definitely has a streak of his father in there. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess that's more of a part 2 plot line, but
Okay, so further into part 3, or I guess going to a different character here in part 3, let's talk about Venli, because the flashbacks finally started, and the flashbacks were a combination of her and Eshonai, as we knew they would be. What was the effectiveness of the flashbacks for you guys?
I'm not
Negative.
super interested in her backstory.
Yeah, gosh, this was my main concern coming into the book, was that I previously I haven't cared about the Parshendi all that much, and I was worried that with these flashbacks I wasn't going to care, and I haven't been convinced that I should care because there haven't been any super big ramifications from what happened, because we already kind of knew that these things happened. Like, it was cool seeing Gavilar and Dalinar and good connection back to the beginning of the series. Maybe there's some question of who this mysterious woman Axendwith, I think is her name. I wrote down her name. From, I'm assuming, the Sons of Honor, who gave the Void Spren the first time. Maybe we wonder, like, is her mom still around? But those things all, like, it doesn't seem like any of those things matter all that much compared to the other flashbacks that we, prompted these huge questions and twists.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's not been very huge revelations so far. It's the things that have kind of been interesting are that, she knew Ulim a lot longer than we previously had known, and he was in fact kind of like a Spren inhabiting her gem heart, trapping another Spren in there, kind of like the opposite, where he was a Void Spren trapping a normal Spren. Now she has a Light Spren trapping a Void Spren. So that's kind of been the most interesting thing. And I guess we do see this sibling rivalry, which is pushing her kind of onto darker and darker paths, trying to set herself apart from Eshonai. But that's been the main thing, and I'm hoping that Sanderson's setting up for a bit greater reveals with Venli's backstory, and he usually has been. I mean, with other stories, I feel like we should maybe trust him a little bit.
Yeah.
This will develop into something more.
Yeah, honestly, up until most of the way through Kaladin's flashbacks, I didn't really care about them. Like I was more interested in Bridge 4.
Yeah,
than I
but you
was
still
in his
had,
flashbacks.
with Kaladin's flashbacks, there was this huge unanswered question of what happened to him, right? And that tension kept the flashbacks going the whole time, because you're wondering if you were going to learn more and you were interested in learning about the character. But with Venli, we already know, like, there's no unanswered questions for me right now.
Yeah. So, but okay. The last thing I will say about this is that I do think it served the purpose of making Venli and Shonai surprisingly like more relatable to me. I understand where they're coming from a lot more, and I think it's going to have a greater impact when we see Venli actually hopefully accomplish her goal or fail in accomplishing her goal. I think it's going to make me care more about it, because
That's
I
fair.
see that this is something she's been trying to do her entire life, and not just like, oh, well, now all my people are dead, let me try and figure out something to do. This is like a lifelong pursuit for her.
That's fair, because I do think I care about present day Venli a lot more now. I care about those events at least a little bit. And it's fun to see her moving towards another ideal. And she saves Kaladin's family from Lezian, and she helps out Relaine. And then she almost swears another ideal, but then she realizes that it can't really, go there until she saves Lift. Instead, she says, I will seek freedom for those in bondage. And the words are not accepted. And so she's got to do a little bit more here.
And my Moses theory is just like, I mean, come on, like, this is the next ideal, is leading people out of bondage.
The Moses theory sounded good.
Yeah, man. Moses theory is good. I think, is this the first time that a character has had the words not accepted? Because I feel like every other time when a character is like kind of had the words revealed to them, that it was accepted. I know that, like, I guess if we're being technical about Lopen or the Lopen, I think tried to say the words a few times, but it was more of like he knew it wouldn't
more
work.
in jest, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I can.
This is just like
think that's
hard
true.
declined.
Yeah, these words are not accepted. One thing with those was she notes that it was a female in voice that says those words were not accepted. I thought that was interesting because I thought it was more of like a Stormfather voice that was accepting the other words.
Well, she's. I mean, what order is she going to be in? Because doesn't that matter?
Well, Will Shaper, but are some orders cultivation and some honor?
I think so.
I'm not sure.
Maybe she was
Yeah,
just doing it
questions.
because the Stormfather couldn't reach her at that point.
I
This
think
could-
it's kind
yeah.
of 5 and maybe it's kind of 5 and 5 when they were talking when Navani was talking about the different music scales, and she was like she was talking about how they use a scale that is like a 10-note scale, but it's split up into 2 5-note scales. That might be, kind of what the orders are. 5 are from honor, 5 are from
Who have we
cultivation.
actually seen? Gosh, maybe, just like a demo, this is not something we should do while we're recording, but let's try anyway. Who have we actually seen swear oaths? So Windrunners, obviously, and we've heard the Stormfather accept those words. I think it was the Stormfather, acting as a proxy for honor, we would assume. And then obviously Dalinar, but that's, directly to the Stormfather. I don't think we've seen Shallan actually have any of her oaths been accepted by some mysterious voice in the sky, and other orders we haven't really seen directly advance.
Have we
So-
seen Lift swear any oaths? Because I figure she would definitely be the one. If cultivation was gonna talk to anybody, it would be her, right?
Yeah,
But
let's go
I
back and
can't-
check that out. Yeah, good theory. Okay, this is Phantology. We'll investigate, and if you're listening, please let us know if you have any insights on this, whether or not some are of honor, some are of cultivation, and if this will be something cultivation gets more involved in eventually. And then with the last thing with Venli
Well,
was
how many? Because we know. Wait. How many bondsmiths are there going to be to kind of riff off that? We know that there's
Well, there
supposed to
could
be a
be 3.
bondsmith for the Stormfather. Yeah, the cultivate. So, okay, so we're not saying that there's a bondsmith for every distinct type of order.
No,
Right.
no, there's 3. There's
No way,
there's-
man. Come on, this is Bondsmith 101. We've got the sibling and the Night Watcher that could still be bonded.
and maybe one of the unmade. That's still one of my hypotheses, is that
Ooh, yeah.
Odium's he's gonna somehow get a bondsmith, maybe with his own 10th surge.
Mm. Yeah, because we've only got the 9 surges right now, and they don't like the Bondsmith surge right now. Whichever one that is. Adhesion? Something like that? No, Adhesion is the one the Kaladin is using successfully. No, it is.
No, yeah,
It's also the Bondsmith one, yeah.
That's why. Well, to answer your question, Ben, though, the sibling, the Stormfather, and the Night Watcher are the 3 potential spren, and so there are 3 potential bondsmiths.
So we'll have Dabid and Dalinar and some unmade Bondsmith and some other random one for the Night Watcher. Okay.
Also, wait, was it lost on you that I feel like they kind of said that bondsmiths were the reason why Ashen was burnt or was ruined?
Surges. Well,
I think it mentioned. I think that who I'm trying to remember when the conversation happened and who it was with. But I thought Dalinar was like trying to get better with his powers, and somebody told him that was.
I don't think, no. I think they just said that was the initial connection from Ashen.
I don't know. Actually, now I'm kind of remembering when Dalinar was talking to the Stormfather, right? And he was saying, how come you didn't know I was capable of this? And the Stormfather was like, well, there's a lot of things that you could be capable of, but Tanavast wasn't he kind of keeping check on some of the powers that the bondsmiths could use?
I think so.
Okay. Well, we're discovering in this episode that there are a lot of answers that we don't have yet. But that's
Big
fine. I
world.
mean, we're only 3/5 of the way through the book, right? And only 4 books out of 5 in the first sequence. So there's many more secrets to be revealed. Okay, let's talk about Navani. So this was the scientist chapter or part with Navani. Real heavy, like basically if you don't care about the scientific method and your brain doesn't think that way, you're probably not into the Navani chapters. I'm like medium into it. So I thought it was interesting, but at some point you do just kind of like accept what's going on and like, okay, yeah, this is interesting, but Sanderson, please just tell me what the answer is.
I'm liking them. I think mainly because of how we're learning more about Rabaniel, and we know that Rabaniel's evil. She tried to create that disease that would kill only humans.
Yeah.
But I'm almost liking Rabaniel and from her interactions with Navani, and so I'm just wondering, is she just this good at being deceitful, or is there another side to Rabaniel that we don't know yet? I'm not sure. What do you guys
Yeah,
think?
we're definitely trying to. We know that Rabaniel has like an evil plan that requires, like the Radiants be left alive, and that is some way to win the war. I don't know. I think I've just kind of had in the back of my mind that Rabaniel is like absolute epitome of evil, and she's just very good at putting on a good face.
So you don't buy that she is actually trying to find peace?
Dude,
She's
she
trying
would,
to
like,
find peace
try
through annihilation.
She created like COVID-19, like she created this disease that was supposed to like wipe out like a tenth of humanity, but like also have some senior casualties. And she was like, sounds
No,
good.
it was supposed to wipe out all of humanity, but I think it only wiped
Oh,
out like a tenth.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, it only decimated
So-
us.
So okay, my crackpot theory is that she's trying to like come up with the equivalent of an atomic bomb, because she always like talks about the axioms, which I think is kind of equivalent to atoms. They talk about how the axioms make up everything. So I think
Okay.
that's just, and so she's talking about how she wants to get the like void light to cancel out the
Yeah, you're definitely right on
stormlight.
this. Yeah.
You think she's
So-
the Oppenheimer of Roshar?
Yeah, and
So she's going to use the antimatter light spears that Navani was talking about, something like that,
yeah, to like create like bombs that will
that
just,
Gavilar
'cause
had. Yeah.
it foreshadows that with the discussion about troop formations and battles, like attacking, and what's like, well, if you can just destroy tens of thousands of people, like one person can, that decide to gather themselves together like that, then
Yeah.
And also one parallel that I think is really interesting is both Rabanael and Dalinar are trying to come up with ways to end the entire conflict altogether. While everybody else takes a more myopic view, they're both, it has a lot of those parallels in their views.
Yeah, I like that. Also, to riff off your atomic bomb theory, she's also interested in figuring out how the fourth bridge flies. So maybe she's trying to come up with some vehicle to dispense the bomb.
Guys, Rabaniel wrote Rhythm of War. That's my theory. And
I think-
I like it. Yeah. It talks about how the author was unable to leave the Rosharan system. And I do mean the in-world book, I know Brandon Sanderson wrote the book we're reading. And then Mraize gives Rabanael that present of sorts. And we know Mraize is very involved with being a world hopper. He's got a collection of lots of stuff. They referenced the sand, which comes from White Sand, Taldane, and it's talked about by the deepest ones and in the chapter headings. I think it's Rabanael who's writing this, and talks about them being thousands of years old. And I want to reread those chapter headings through this lens of an atomic bomb coming. I think it could work.
I think we need to, maybe this will be a perk for our patrons. I think we need to go through and just put everything together. One thing that I did like about these epigraph things was that Sanderson, if you notice, he said that a lot of them were undertext, which he
Yeah.
actually set up in previous books, and that is where the woman that is writing will speak to other women in more of like breaking the fourth wall, like kind of putting their thoughts and like
Uh-huh.
annotations underneath the like actual text. So it was just a cool application
Wait.
of all this.
So could the undertext be Navani annotating the book Rhythm of War that Rabbaniel wrote?
Yeah, that could be it. That could be true. I always assumed that it was the person that was writing the book that was doing the
Being
undertext.
like dictated
for example,
by the
if
man.
if
Yeah.
right, if a
But
male is
Rabbaniel wouldn't
dictating it,
know. But Rabbaniel wouldn't know how to write the book, so maybe Rabbaniel is dictating it to Navani, who's then writing the undertext.
I think
That could
Rabbaniel
be.
knows how to write.
Yeah, she could write.
In Alethi,
well,
maybe.
Yeah.
you know, I
Doesn't
don't
have
know.
to be
Okay.
written in Alethi
Hmm.
though.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's true.
But this
All right.
undertext thing is going to be important. Some of them are undertext, some of them aren't. And I guess my original point in bringing that up was of how cool of a world building. Like this is like a perfect example of like this interesting, unique concept that like you think could exist in society today. In fact, it kind of does with like with like notes at the end of chapters and stuff. Like it's something that has parallels in today's world that he's kind of like built out the system in a Alethi culture that he's able to kind of like tie in this cool way.
Okay, so we haven't talked at all about the other parts of the plot here, which is Dalinar and Yasna. And
There's a reason for that.
I struggled, guys. This was my my worst part of part 3. They're off fighting a war, and it was so boring, and I didn't care about it at all. Am I wrong?
It's
Yeah,
kind
no,
of like
you're not wrong.
It's become a little bit obvious that this war is almost a device to get them out of the picture while all of this other stuff is going on in the tower.
Yeah, it totally is. And
I
I'm
think
disappointed that it doesn't seem to have any real impact.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, Josh, let's hear you. Let's hear
Okay.
your.
So first of all, I'm just realizing how much of a fanboy I am because I recognize what I recognize where you're coming from, but so first of all, I think that the scenes with Wit and Yasna, which I think we'll talk about more later on, those were super, super entertaining. With the politicking and the whole duel with that High Lord.
Really? Okay, interesting.
Yeah. But let me get back to
I disagree.
But let me let me get back to Dalinar. So of course this is like a diversion. We know that, right? Like it's Dalinar even knows that he's doing something wrong. He just doesn't know what it is. And maybe it is a little bit contrived, but I don't mind it. And I think that there will be a payoff when Dalinar finally figures out what he should have been doing the entire time and finds a way to make that work. I think that's going to be a really big payoff within the book. And I think that it also gives him a place where he's away from a lot of other characters where he can really work on becoming a bondsmith, which I've wanted to see for a while. So both of those things.
I agree with that, Josh. I think I agree with that. I agree with Steven's point though that like this pointless war isn't the best backdrop for that. So
it seems so disconnected, the two plots.
See, I don't see it as disconnected. I see it as Sanderson just kind of placing characters where he wants them. Like, okay, we're just going to put like a pause on Adolin. They're off in Shadesmar. Okay, we're going to have Kaladin over here in the tower and he's doing his own thing. So maybe disconnected, but it's also just like very clear character management where he's not even attempting to hide the fact that he's kind of just like juggling all these balls and just needs them to be in a very specific place at specific points of time.
So it's going to work out, right? We trust Sanderson that these three very disparate plot lines are going to come together and we're going to understand some reasons.
They're not that disparate. I don't think they're that disparate. Like especially the war within the tower. Like I think that they're going to pretty easily connect. Like I think that they're I think that they will, I guess.
Trust in the Sanderlanche, Stephen.
I trust. I do trust. But that doesn't mean that I haven't been reading this and been like enjoying it, certainly. But at the same time, just wondering, like, it's a
Yeah.
little odd sometimes.
Yeah,
I think that this is how multiple viewpoint books work.
Well,
When
Josh,
you're-
we've all read a lot of multiple viewpoint
I-
books. We all know how they read.
I-
This seems much more of like very disconnected. I agree with Steven. And maybe that goes back to the fact that like Sanderson sets up these books in such a way of like each part is kind of like a self-contained book and they all kind of come together at the end. And that's just kind of how he outlines things and how he's able to have these big arching storylines and doesn't get lost in them, which I think we all appreciate. But at the same time, as a reader, you're like, I just want to enjoy this reading experience a little bit more than I am right now.
And that's probably how I feel, Ben. But I do think, you do make a good point, Josh. It is how other books work. Like the Song of Ice and Fire books, lots of viewpoints. You're always cycling back and forth between them. But one of the big knocks on it was between A Feast of Crows and A Dance of Dragons. They're two like totally different sets of characters and they're gone for a long time. And I guess you see the same types of things and saying, okay, these characters are going to be absent from this whole plot line of this part, and then they're going to be back in the next part hundreds of pages later. And I think he addressed that. I think he said like, look, it's part of the way that it's plotted, so you may not like it, but we had to do it.
Yeah.
I'm excited though for Dalinar to try and meet Ishar. See,
Yeah,
see
that
how
was a
far
good
gone-
cliffhanger.
How far
Yeah.
gone this herald is, who's proclaimed himself a god priest or god king or something, and is
Yeah,
fighting a war.
I think it's pretty apparent that that's why they needed to get him up to Emul, is so that he can meet this Ashar guy.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. So we're trusting in
Okay.
Sanderson, trusting it's going to work
So
out.
trusting in Sanderson. Okay, so Josh, to bring up your point about liking Yasna's duel with this random high prince, who apparently there's only one that hasn't fallen in line. When the whole plot of Way of Kings was the fact that you have these high princes that are all kind of all for one and one for, or all for one. Anyway, okay, I think I brought this up in maybe Oathbringer, where we talked about how awkward the politicking has been for these books and how Sanderson's way of winning Queen Fen's like son over to the cause was like dueling him and getting stabbed and then like healing himself by Stormlight, and like that was the impressive display. It almost felt like a repeat of that, right? Like only like here's Yasna kind of like essentially doing something very similar in a very like forced politicking way.
There was like zero setup for it, right? I think that was my
Josh is, like-
criticism of it.
Josh is holding himself back.
Let's hear it, Josh.
I just liked it. It was cool. It was cool to see Yasna getting involved, like being a queen, because that I think the other thing you would say is, well, we spent so much time following Elhokar trying to be a king and Dalinar trying to hold the kingdom together, that now that Yasna is in charge, we just don't care anymore. Like there needs to be some scenes, and that's not going to be the primary focus of the book. So I thought that this was a cool way to have like a very entertaining scene that addressed that part of the storyline that we all know is going on, but we just don't really want to see it on screen all that much.
Agree with that. Agree it was necessary for Yasna, and agree that it was nice in terms of the development of the leadership. But my criticism was the whole thing was centered around this random high prince, Ruthar, who we have no connection to, where we know he is a jerk because we're told he's a jerk 5 pages before the payoff scene happens. And so if this was like a Sadius type guy who we've had experience with and all of a sudden he's bested, that's awesome. But this dude, who cares? That was my struggle.
Yeah, I guess I get, but the thing is, I don't think it was about him. I think it was about Yasna showing that she's in charge, that she's holding, Alethkar together.
So half appreciated.
There were some greater political implications, which is that Yasna is clearly, she intends for greater change than maybe Dalinar is comfortable with. Because Dalinar has hinted that he's not really comfortable with other forms of government than pure monarchies. But Yasna's like, hopefully, I'll be the last king or queen of Alathala and
Yeah,
Dalinar.
Yeah,
Dalinar.
sometimes Dalinar has those moments of like the grandpa, like back in my day, there was just
Yeah.
monarchs, and that's the only way it should be done.
Like, okay, boomer Dalinar.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the Dalinar is like, oh man, the Azish, those guys stink. They can't do anything. And Yasna's like, hey, these guys might have something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yasna's the AOC.
I think that's a fun. It's a fun
of the
Dalinar
cock
quirk.
of Roshar.
AOC of Roshar.
I don't know.
Yeah,
how
man,
you
whipping
do
words
that.
around like javelins.
All right, let's
Wait,
actually
wait,
go.
wait. No.
Yeah.
Well, there's one more important thing we need to discuss, which is Yasna's shard plate, which where
Wait. I wanted to talk about that in the worst of the best spoiler. So maybe you can bring up your thoughts there.
Okay, all right, I'll rebut your worst of the best.
All right. All right. We are going to go into our worst of the best segment now. So if you're listening to the podcast, Kate Reading and Michael Kramer will read that in now. Okay. So like we did in the previous two parts for this edition of the worst of the best, we're going to talk about the worst thing from the chapter, obviously, or from the part, obviously, and then either turn that around and make it into the best thing, or just tell us what you're looking forward to in the rest of the book. So I already have mine. Obviously, I can start unless anyone else wants to jump in.
Go for it, Sue.
Okay, yeah. So mine was the shard plate, the spren plate with Yasna, because we've been looking forward to this for so long, figuring out what, once you figured out what a shard blade was, it was like, obviously the next thing was, what is a shard plate? And we had seen it in visions. It was glowing. We had so many hints about it with the cousin spren, but it wasn't yet revealed entirely. And even though it seemed so obvious and Reddit had speculated for the past 3 years that this is what it was, and still not necessarily confirmed at this point, but now we've seen Yasna wearing her spren plate. That's just what I'm going to call it. And it was so anticlimactic because it was just so matter of fact. Like, yeah, okay, I've got shard plate. No one else comments on it. Dalinar's not like, how'd you get the shard plate? That's actually pretty valuable thing. Can't believe you have one of those, Yasna. How can I get one? It was just felt so flat for me. And the best part was I thought the scene was really good with her fighting and getting a sense of her unfamiliarity with the battlefield. And this did actually show you the stakes of the battle a little bit, even though I still was not totally sold on this whole conflict. So I guess, Ryan, tell me why I'm wrong here.
Well, I don't think you're entirely wrong. I think that it's a little bit weird that she has shard plate and it hasn't been addressed to the readers really how she got it, or the characters haven't really wondered themselves. But I would be even more upset if anybody other than Kaladin got their shard plate, or had a scene where they like say their oaths and then once again, like Iron Man, like all of a sudden all these like parts of armor just like fly onto them. If that's anybody other than Kaladin, I'm gonna be very disappointed, I guess. And
Okay.
I definitely want to see the Iron Man scene now that you described it. Yeah.
This is sort of a way in which I think he's trying to save that moment for Kaladin where he says his oaths and then he gets his shard plate. But I do agree that it is weird that Yasna has shard plate off camera.
Okay, so is it not just the case that she got it in this year in between books? I feel like I kind of chalked that up to a year passed. This is one of the things that happened that nobody would remark on because they would have all remarked on it when it happened, and we just didn't see that.
But it's such a big thing to just ignore in a year. Like, it's a huge development. Like, none of the new Radiants have gotten to their fourth oaths yet, other than Yasna, apparently.
Yeah. There could have been a scene where it's like, oh, like Dalinar's like, she donned her shard plate again. That still is a shock, even though I've seen it a few times now.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's all we needed for this for this worst of the best to fall flat. But no, it's an awesome worst of the best, of course. Okay, who's next?
I'll go next. And this, so my worst of the best, this could be that I misunderstood the scene a little bit, but maybe not. I don't know. I'm interested to hear what you guys think. So I love the Kaladin scene where he was fighting to destroy the node. And so he like jumps into the well and uses the Fabrial to propel himself towards it. And then he finds Rabanio under the water trying to corrupt the node, and then he destroys it. Then he tries to escape back out, but the pursuer puts a cap at the top of the well, so he's not able to get out. So then he goes back down, and then Rabanio has just kind of disappeared.
No, I think that's when she slices him, right? Or no, was that before?
She sliced him before, but I think it does mention that he just like goes right by her, and she's just wondering what's going on. Rabanio's a crappy fighter, by the way. Just something that is worth mentioning.
She has transformation, doesn't she? Which is like basically soul casting.
It's whatever she's described as, like a builder. I don't remember exactly what surge it is, or if it was even explicitly stated, but she'd be able to, shape the stone. Would that be transformation? I can't keep them straight.
Didn't she like turn people into puffs of smoke when she was?
She turned a spear. She turned a spear into dust, and I think she like attacked someone with some evil inky blackness things. So yeah, maybe not a terrible fighter, but she doesn't even try to resist Kaladin.
Right, and you're saying that it was a cool scene, so that was the best part, but the worst part was like, what the heck happened to Rabanio?
There was like a little bit of discontinuity.
I guess she's had chances to kill him in the past, but like if she really wanted to stop him, I feel like she could have stopped him at that point.
No, if there's one thing we know about Rabanio, she like is excited by these challenges and doesn't necessarily care about ending threats.
So maybe Rabanio has some feelings for Kaladin that she hasn't.
Stop trying to ship Kaladin.
Ryan will take anyone.
I want to ship Kaladin.
Let's marry this man. Send him off somewhere.
All right, Josh, where's the best? Go.
So I think my worst of the best has been Wit's scenes so far in the book. I have really liked his kind of rap battle with that random high prince, like where he's making all the jokes at his expense and something about his children. I don't know. It was good. Like it was humorous, but there hasn't been yet the deep wit, like I'm going to help you rethink who you are and like reimagine yourself to become something better.
It is going to happen. Sanderson said it will.
Right. So Josh, you're talking about like Kaladin's cliff scene and Shilon's like scene and
girl who stood up scene. Yeah. So your worst of the best is impatience, Josh?
Yeah.
Yes. But I feel like Wit has gotten a lot of screen time in this book, but has been just doing his Wit self, not his Hoid self.
Okay. That's fair. What do you guys kind of play off of this? What do you make of the Thyadakar revelation to Yasna and all that? Or is that maybe the best thing that you were going to talk about?
Well, my whole best thing is that I feel like the best is yet to come with this, like it's just the worst because it hasn't happened yet. And I feel like there's been opportunities for it to happen, especially with Yasna. But
the revelation was the Thyadakar revelation?
That he's a world hopper.
That Wit has known him in several other locations.
Yeah. Wit's known him in other worlds. Now is the time to reveal.
We talked about this in the Discord. Steven thinks that we haven't seen this person before. I think that this person, his name begins with a K, and that you've known him from other Mistborn books. I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to spoil anything for other people. But I don't know. I just feel like we've seen him.
I don't think so. I think he's new. I think he's a new. He's like the anti-Hoid or something. He's someone from Hoid's backstory, because he says he's clashed with them, several times over the years.
What? Okay. Well, so to kind of finish things up, because we're running low on time, my worst of the best was Dalinar's interaction with Nail and how he was introduced to his connection powers, or kind of he saw flashbacks of Nail's life, and it was very okay. So this is why it's the worst of the best, because it was a really cool scene. I wanted to like spend a lot of time and try and find like figure out and piece together what each of those flashbacks meant, and like if we like could know them, or if like we should know them. It was just a very like a scene that felt like it packed much more of a punch than I was like willing to like give, because I wanted to kind of keep on reading and not spend like an hour dissecting that. So anyway, and then I really also like the fact that Dalinar has these powers that he's beginning to investigate, and he's kind of trying it on these poor soldiers. That he's like, "Hey, come over here. Let me see if I can like discern your past." You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's kind of messed up.
Yeah. So anyway, it's kind of worst of the best. It's mostly best, but like it was the worst because I'm like trying to learn about Dalinar's new powers while trying to figure out like these in-depth things about Nail. So
that scene does kind of show, I think, the relative power level of heralds, because Zeth was just like totally dismantled by Nail. And we know that Zeth is no pushover, because he killed like multiple shard bearers at a time when he was the assassin in white, just assassinating all these people.
And and was a match for Kaladin.
Yeah. And so like we think that these Radiants are so good, but then Nail just kind of comes up. And it also reminded me a little bit of the scene in Indiana Jones where that guy is like twirling his sword around, and then Indiana Jones just like pulls out his gun and shoots him. Like Nail's like come in, like just like beats up all these people, and then the Stormfather's like, wait, just touch him. And so then Dalinar's just like, oh, okay, poke. And then he's like, oh my gosh, and runs away.
Yeah. I guess why did he run away? Let's speculate more. We are low on time, but I guess, like you say, Ryan, if heralds are concerning, then we should be concerned about what we're up against here with Ishar going into part 4. So if you like Phantology, you can find more of our reviews. We're going to continue to review the rest of the book, and that will all be online at www.phantologybooks.com. You can support us at patreon.com/phantology_books. And we talked about a lot of theories and things we weren't necessarily sure about. There's a lot of details in the book. We apologize for mistakes, but if you want to talk about those things with us more, you can do that on Discord. Invites are in the episode description, on our website, wherever. We're out there. We're easy to find. Okay, guys, back to reading part 4. We excited to finish up?
Back to reading.
Sure.
Okay, I'm glad that we recorded this. Now I can honestly go into part 4 without having to worry about potentially spoiling things.
It's been
awesome.
It hasn't been as hard as I thought it would be, but there have been a couple
that's
times
good.
where I've been like,
probably when I've said my theories.
Shut up, Ryan.
Like when Kaladin kisses Raboniel.
All right. See you guys later.
See ya.